It's music. It's supposed to be passionate and joyful and wonderful. And if your classroom isn't joyful and wonderful, then the kids are going to hate it and they're not going to fall in love with music.
Welcome to the Career Curious podcast. I'm your host, George Roots. I am joined today with Nicholas Flott. Nicholas, do you mind introducing yourself?
Hey, yo, I'm Nicholas Flott. I'm an elementary music teacher in Austin, Texas.
Nice. How'd you get started in education?
Music came first. I believe if you're a music teacher, you're a musician first and you're a teacher second. So I started singing, as soon as I could talk. My family sang growing up. We all sang together. I sang in church choir, started singing solos. I sang in youth chorales. I sang in high school. I was also a band kid, so I played the alto saxophone. I was drum major for 2 years. Yeah, I've just always had music in my life. Then I went to college to go to music school. So
So,
yeah.
what led you to education?
They asked me this question my freshman year, my first music ed class. They were like, "Why are you here? Why do you want to be a music educator?" And for me, it was always just there was no other option for me that I could see myself doing. I was like, that was it. That was the only thing I could see myself doing for the rest of my life. So I did it.
What compelled you to go towards the age group that you're teaching?
Elementary, you mean?
Yes.
Like, well, that kind of just fell into my lap, so to speak. I was supposed to be a high school choir director. I student taught at a high school in Georgia. And when I went to apply for jobs, there were a lot more elementary positions available. So I took an elementary job thinking I would stay there for a year and then try to find a real teaching job, high school, middle school, that kind of thing. But then I just kind of fell in love with it. And I've been doing it. This is my 7th year teaching elementary, and I don't see myself changing that anytime soon.
So, I guess what happened? What aspect of the job compelled you or made you love it that I guess your plans now changed to stay in this space?
I mean, there's a couple of things that happened. I had no idea what I was doing, and I just started making it up as I went. I mean, they teach you a lot about music and a lot about teaching in college, but there's so much that they can't teach you in college. I didn't have very much experience in elementary music, so I was just making it up as I go, and I found that I could be creative in my planning, in the way I delivered lessons. My own personal creativity was being fulfilled. So that was a plus. That was a huge factor. And then I just found such a huge welcoming community in elementary teachers. Like a lot of times in high school positions, middle school positions, it's competitive and everybody's trying to like be the best versions of themselves that they can and show it off. And so sometimes it can be a little competitive in nature and not as welcoming. But in the elementary world, it's the complete opposite. Everybody wants to share their knowledge and their experience and their expertise, and they really want you to succeed because they know how important it is, how important elementary music is, and they just want to see you succeed. So everybody's willing to share and help you grow, or at least point you in the right direction so that you can deliver the best education for your students. Community.
So, what does your day to day look like? What does a Monday look like? How does your week go? How's your week progress?
Well, I see every grade level that I teach every day, once a day. So I teach K through 5. I start my morning with 5th grade, and then I teach 4th grade, 3rd grade, 2nd grade. Got a lunch break slash planning period, and then I teach kindergarten and 1st grade at the end of the day. Then, depending on the day, I'll have an after school choir rehearsal, or right now we're doing a musical for the spring. So we are rehearsing after school Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Now, that, of course, is something I do because I enjoy it. It's unpaid. I don't get a stipend or anything for doing that. So that's just something extra that I like to do. But yeah, I see all of my classes once, maybe twice a week, because we're on a 3-day rotation. So an A day, a B day, and a C day.
Gotcha. Uh, What would you say are some of the strengths that would be required to do your job effectively?
Well, there's that magic word patience. And truly, it's something you don't fully grasp until you work with students, or at least with elementary students. You can never have too much patience. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. I lose my patience with them all the time. But it's so humbling to like, it's more of a practice rather than something you're just going to get right all the time. So patience is such a big thing. And I think particularly with elementary, you have to have a sense of wonderment, a sense of whimsy when you're teaching elementary because you want to make learning fun for them because you want them to fall in love with the process of learning, not just teaching them knowledge and content. Especially at this young of age, teaching them to love learning, I think that's your biggest goal, to be honest.
Yeah,
I think another strength is time management and knowing when to shut off the work. Because a lot of times as teachers, we're forced to do planning and preparation outside of our contractual hours. So it's really easy to lose yourself in that and get lost in just, everyday teaching and doing too much work outside of what you're paid to do. So you really have to manage your time well and learn when to shut it off because there will always be work that you can do tomorrow.
so, what would you say? I guess, are there any recent wins that you're proud of and you would like to share?
Yes, I was proud of myself this past fall. I did an after school choir and I changed the structure of how I presented the choir. We had two choirs after school, a fourth grade choir and a fifth grade choir. And I felt so proud because I actually got real teaching done after school once, is I only meet them for an hour once a week. And I had never experienced such joy in a choir rehearsal. And I mean, in my own choir rehearsals, because typically it's just, shoving music down their kids' throats and trying to get them to memorize things really quickly. But the way I structured it this year, I was able to like actually teach and work on musicality and get them to understand the difference in a choir tone versus singing by yourself, how to blend as a group. And it gave me a big boost of confidence, I think.
If you could go back in time to Nicholas 8 years ago getting started, do you have any advice that you would give yourself that would help you be more successful or to make the job easier? Like, what would you tell yourself when you began?
Gosh, I would say probably to protect my personal time more and focus on things outside of teaching because it's so easy to get burnt out. And I almost did burn out a couple of times because I wasn't prioritizing my own personal time. Again, it's so easy to get lost in all the things that teachers are required to do and all the pressures they put on teachers. And I don't even see the brunt of that. I'm not a classroom teacher, so there are a lot of things that and red tape that I don't have to deal with that a classroom teacher would have to deal with. And I still feel the pressure, so I can imagine what they're dealing with. So I would say focus on things that you love to do and prioritize your own personal growth and happiness outside of school because it is so easy to get lost in what you have to do.
So, I am a 42-year-old engineer manager, but engineer. Could I stop what I'm doing now and become a music teacher? Like, what would be like? Is that a possibility? I guess I'm trying to ask what are the barriers that would stop or that would propel a career change?
Well, do you like working with kids? That's the biggest barrier. I mean, you got to have a love for the students. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, then do not go into teaching. You can be a lot happier doing other things and making more money. So I think that's a big barrier. If you don't like working with the students, then there's no point. I think being a musician first is sort of a prerequisite to become a music teacher. There's that saying, those who can't do teach. Well, I think it's terrible. It's a awful cliche because you should be a musician first, you're an artist first. If you don't have the passion and the creativity and the artistry before you go and teach those kids, then it's not going to be nearly as successful.
It sounds like that statement would transcend music, and I think that's a really powerful statement. If you don't have the passion for it, then how can you teach it? Uh,
Right. It's music. It's supposed to be passionate and joyful and wonderful. And if your classroom isn't joyful and wonderful, then the kids are going to hate it and they're not going to fall in love with music.
Absolutely. So I think I've asked you all the questions that are on my mind to ask. I'd like to end with two questions. If you didn't have to be a teacher, you could go back in time or even now. Are there any careers that you'd be curious to know more about? It doesn't have to relate to education or music, just in general, like in the world of things to do. Is there anything that captures your curiosity?
I don't know. There's like, as a kid, I always thought it would be cool to go into space, but I don't feel like I would want to be an astronaut. I've always just loved teaching and loved the idea of creating community through music with these students and creating a lifelong love and joy with music. So
That's
I'm not,
amazing.
I've never been really curious about anything else, to be honest.
And so, last question, very simple question. Do you have any questions for me?
Well, what made a 42-year-old engineer curious about teaching? Like, what do you care about teaching?
I think teaching is kind of like how you said it is a passionate thing. It's how we pass on knowledge. Cells deteriorate, we die, knowledge lives on, can we affect and impact other people? And how do we choose to do that? There's negative energy and positive energy. I think that if you can infuse positive energy with learning, then it creates passion. If it creates passion, then we do it passionately and we do something dope. As a single person, we can only do so much dopeness. If we can teach, then everyone can spread like a seed and we create lots of dopeness. And I think people who see that tend to be fun to interview.
All right, my last question then is, when's the last time you sang, George?
Probably yesterday. Yeah, I sing quite a bit. Kelly's often surprised how much I sing. I probably sing more than Kelly does, even though she sings louder and better.
It's not about talent or how well you do it. It's just that you do it.
Well, thank you, Nicholas, so much for your time and sharing your experiences. It's been quite the pleasure.
Yeah, man. Anytime.